You have been hired by a large general contractor to set up a planning and scheduling organization. How do you do it?
I'm going to start off by assessing what do we have? Do we have any experts, any schedulers already on staff? Or are we a company who's using consultants, utilizing outside sources? I'm also going to ask why. What's important for you to get out of this? As your group grows, especially if you have bigger projects, that's what really drives the staff up. It gets exponentially more challenging to make sure people are getting the development opportunities, something that keeps their job engaging, giving people opportunities to show that it's a career in planning and scheduling. You actually don't want to solve the problems. And it's really hard because you can know deep down with all your experience that you could solve it for them, but that's not going to help. So you give them advice. Hey, try this, try that, and stay positive. You don't have to know everything, but you need to put the time in to study, and it's a respect thing. If you're going to come onto someone's job and to help them, you can't ask them every detail about their project. You need to know some things to help make their job easier. You don't have to know everything, but you need to put the time in to study, and it's a respect thing.
Hi, folks. A quick one before we dive into this week's episode. Our book, The Critical Path Career, How to Advance in Construction and Planning and Scheduling, is out now, and you can order it on Amazon. We'll include a link below. This is a great way to show support for the Beyond Deadlines podcast, and Greg and I have worked extremely hard taking everything we know in our 30 years of experience, plus everything we've picked up from shooting this podcast, and we've tried to pack it into an information-dense book that you can use right away. In the book, we have specific strategies on how to get a raise, how to get a promotion, and find a new job. We include 26 of the best interview questions that we have come across, in addition to 34 specific impact ideas that you can go use on your projects today. We want to thank everyone who's shown us support so far and enjoy this week's episode. Welcome to the Beyond Deadlines podcast, where we tackle challenges that planning and schedule leaders come across on a day-to-day basis. My name is Micah Piippo, and I'm a planning and scheduling manager.
My name is Brady Mercer, and I'm the National Planning and Scheduling Director for J.E. Dunn Construction.
On today's episode, we are going to dive into team building. Brady's on the hot seat, and we are tackling the challenge of how do you build and grow a planning and scheduling organization. Brady, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. You have been hired by a large general contractor to set up a planning and scheduling organization. How do you do it?
All right. So if I'm coming in, I'm going to start off by assessing what do we have? What do we have inside the company? Do we have any experts, any schedulers already on staff? Or are we a company who's using consultants, utilizing outside sources? So I want to understand that. I'm also going to ask why. Like, why do you want to do it? What's important for you to get out of this? And I can explain a little bit of J.E. Dunn's why, and I think some really important reasons why I think it's helpful to have your inside group, especially as you grow your company and you end up with a lot of risk and different size of projects and things like that you want to focus on. Our reason, and we used to be a lot heavier on the consulting side, outsourcing, was to own our own outcomes, to have people in-house that are a part of the company culture, who connect and build real relationships. And I think that's just so important. And I'm sure as we talk through this today, relationships are going to keep coming back and the way we work with each other. Understanding that why, if it's just to save money on consultants, I don't feel like that's probably not genuine. So, and I think as a leader who would be coming in to take a group and build a group, you would want to make sure you establish that with leadership and have alignment. Because as I've been in this role here for 7 years, I've really noticed we've had the support, and without it, I just don't think you can't just expect your schedulers to walk in and start providing support and get buy-in from the teams without leadership, being a part of it. So
all right, let's unpack a little bit of that. There's a lot there, and I want to get into just about every little piece of it, but I'm going to answer your questions because you are on the hot seat. So let's say what your first question was brilliant. What is there? So let's say you have a couple consultants from different consultancies, and you have two or three schedulers currently, but they were just kind of fell into the role. They didn't really, sign up to be a scheduler. It was basically like, we have a big job. We need you to do it. Would you come and do this? And that's all you got. And then in terms of the why, let's say the organization is really looking to improve predictability, but to do so is simply just to reduce costs. So that's where their mindset is. They want to be more predictable to drive their project costs down. And so you've done your kind of assessment, you see where everything's, setting and the kind of pieces you have. How do you start to, bring those people together and form that team and kind of craft your own why in this hypothetical?
Sure. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is set up processes, set up some foundation. I think, I'm betting that if you walk into a company that doesn't already have an organized group and you're tasked with this, there's not a lot of order to. There might be an SOP manual, right, that's got dust still collecting on it.
It's
But
probably
real,
it's probably a physical manual.
yeah,
Like,
maybe.
hey Brady, what we do on the scheduling, it's like right over there on the shelf. It's still in a 3-ring binder.
Yeah, I mean, what you said about like the scheduler who is put into the role because either they like doing it or and they're not actually a scheduler. That reminds me of myself coming right out of college. I was
Okay.
on path to be a project manager and somehow ended up being the person who cared about schedule. That might explain how I got where I am. But I think that's great. You got motivated people, and they're probably, and I would guess if they're in that role, it is because they have a passion for it. Because if you don't have the fire, it doesn't stick.
Yeah, go be a quality manager. No, I'm just kidding. No,
Yeah.
quality managers that are listening, I didn't mean to offend you there. What would be your first top couple process? You mentioned process.
Yeah.
What are the first couple that you would hit right off the bat to get set up and rolling?
Yeah. So, as I use the word process and not SOP, to me, it's really important because process is a living, breathing thing. I would just start with the workflow. And so the way we've, over the years, focused on and kind of redirected away from SOPs into process is, I would start with the pursuit, get work. I would build a good path of how to get to sound scheduling practices, planning practices to help you get work and understand what that is.
Now, when you say get work, you mean the bid schedule.
The pursuits, right? The
Yeah, gotcha.
bids.
Okay, so actually winning awards. So you would go in and kind of build out, this is how we build, those schedules to have an accurate bid, but also a competitive one.
Absolutely. Make sure that we're providing responses that we can actually deliver, and the other thing is when
Novel
you're a
idea.
large organization, you also want your reporting and the things you issue in an RFP, you want them to look consistent. So I think that's kind of, I would start there and then I would process on creating a contract schedule, a baseline schedule, just a good sound process. And
Is there
then,
a reason? So I guess what's your reason why you would start there? I think I have some ideas, but I'd like to hear from you first on why start at that point.
well, because for me, I don't know that I would like pick one and just only focus on it. I like to look at the cycle of work, the workflow. So I would go through and start at pursuit, contract, updating, change management, and just map it out at a high level. I spent some time, we have some people in our organization that they're knowledge managers and they really facilitate this, but I've spent some time building processes and I feel like you start at the high level, kind of like milestone planning a project. And then you just pick one and you start rolling it out and detailing it out. And so to me, that's a mapping process. So that's kind of where I'm saying I would start there because I'd start at the beginning of the map and work my way through and then take each one and build it out. So
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, because I also feel, I mean, starting at the front end, you kind of create your map, and
Mhm.
starting at that front end, it's a bit easier. But then it also, I was thinking, it sets a little bit of the tone downstream.
Yeah,
Like you kind of get the thing situated, and you kind of were moving to the baseline next process. Okay, so you start rolling out some of these processes and tuning it up. From an organization though side, you kind of have a mixed bag of things. You probably don't now have the resources to match the processes. How do you start to build that and marry the two?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen. So in the process, the good thing about the process is, and the interesting thing about planning and scheduling, it's a role where oftentimes you really look at this, and sometimes this offends schedulers, but it is a role that operations can do. They can perform this role. So we write the process in a way that, let's say we don't have a support scheduler, the process is written with backup and information to support anyone in the organization that can do it. So the reason I bring that up is, to me, it's also an onboarding tool. You can go through it and you can get all the tools for production planning and all the different things that you need to help develop that schedule. It's all in one place, and someone can just walk through it pretty simply and understand where the culture of the company is. So when I start bringing in schedulers, support people, and we could talk about the strategy of what that looks like. That would be a foundation. And it's a very early piece. Is like, here's what I can give you to help you understand what we're looking to do here. It's new. It's now an effort that is focused. So it needs to be the hub to me is that process, so people can keep coming back to it.
I think that's really cool because then if you make your process for the lowest possible combination, then anybody can understand it and anybody can utilize it. And they're, in a large general contractor, you're going to have builds where, and I think it doesn't always like make sense for people, but there are builds that just simply either you don't have the resource or it doesn't make sense financially to bring on a planner or scheduler, or a project manager can do a good enough job and actually own it better in their workflows. So I really really like that. That is a great idea to kind of keep those, and that way you can bring in new people. But even when you're a more senior person, you're just looking for something quickly, I bet you can fly through and find exactly what you need because it's written in a way that you don't have to go spend hours trying to figure out what coding structure Brady Mercer came
Yeah,
up with.
exactly. It's mapped by nodes. So you can just go to the node that you're interested in, like create an activity list. And
Yeah.
you can jump in there and you can launch the tool to help develop that activity list. Yeah, so I mean, it's nimble is key. Large organizations spread out across the country can't always have resources where they need to be. And, I love the idea. We spent a lot of time on it, but it really has worked for us because again, I can bring somebody in new or a junior person out of college and say, unpack one of these and let's sit down and go through it. And then we can, it's just it serves a lot of purposes. So,
Yeah. So kind of going on where we're going next is strategically though, when you're looking at here are all the jobs I have, here where they're going, here's potentially where all the jobs we might win, here are the industries we're focused in. How do you look at strategically, where do you hire, how do you hire, who do you bring in? And even touch on, I'm sure you have a little bit of, this person's project based, this person's actually more central now because it's a large organization. So
yeah.
how are you working through that sort of strategy?
Yeah. Um, I can tell you how we do it right now. So we have our 5 regions, actually 6, but we have a leader,
You
a
guys
plan
going
and
to
schedule.
Alaska?
No, that was
Hopefully
uh,
Hawaii. Hopefully Hawaii is a country.
it's actually not a geographic region, so I don't know why we call it that. But the so we have a regional leader in each region, right? So we got a manager, a senior manager in each region, a lead. Some of these individuals will be, I like to classify, there's 2 types. There's a multi-project scheduler, somebody who helps a lot of different teams. That's someone who's constantly weighing priorities and working with a lot of different people. It's a pretty dynamic role. And then there's the on-site large mega project scheduler or multiple on a site, a much different role. It looks, similarities obviously because you're doing planning and scheduling tasks, but your focus is very down and you're doing a lot more work on that one project. So those are kind of the 2 classifications. And I don't know if that answers the question, but
Yeah, no, you get started on it. So you have classification, but I guess kind of where I'm looking at it is, you know, like how do you decide to bring in a multi-scheduler when you look at big
oh yeah,
projects
workflow.
coming up, you know, if you're sitting here imagining, I got to imagine you're submitting head counts and things like that. I
Mhm.
mean, kind of walk me through that phase of it, of how, the numbers
Yeah.
work on the people
Yeah,
side.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So we have a resource planning tool across the whole company. Our senior leaders will input what projects they have on their backlog and how they're going to staff it. So we can see basically our reimbursability, our potential forecast. And there's a lot of ways to do this. I mean, if you're just getting started, I mean, we used to use Excel. We just put all our names of people, all our projects, right, and who's got what project and how that balances out to reimbursability percentage. That's one way to forecast. It's totally fine. If you're talking about a group of 10 people, yeah, use a spreadsheet. And so, yeah, that's the way we do it. We do it. We track internally, like the backlog of work, the pursuits we win, when it's going to project to start. And then we look at, a scheduler, depending on the size, but a multi-project scheduler, 6 projects, if
What
one of them
about
is,
what dollar range about
yeah,
would each of those be in the six? Would those be like, anywhere from 20 to 100 million or is
yeah, I would say so. And then if you got one $400-500 million job, maybe it's like 3
yeah,
if it's not full time. You
gotcha.
could have a $200 million job that's a full time on site job because the risk model is,
Yeah.
where the
And then
client
how are you
actually.
looking at that in terms of, mentioned risk model? Is it kind of like a blend of risk model, complexity, and then like owner's requirements or
The last one probably drives a lot. We have a little experience there, but
yeah,
the owner, and it's okay because a lot of times the owners will make us better, and we fully acknowledge that. A high demanding owner has all the right reasons to do it, and but yes, that will drive up the demand on the project for sure. But yes, the risk. A part of the risk could be we have a superintendent who is maybe a really good planner, but not as good he's not going to get into the schedule and he's not going to update, not going to really work in it. So we need somebody sitting with him. That's
yeah,
just a reality of construction, but that one might require a little more. And so we'll meet with the leaders in the offices and regions and go through like what is the percent you want a scheduler on here, and we kind of work with them and talk about those different things, and then then we lay that out of how many hours a person has per week on a job, and we'll do that map across all of if we have one of our leaders in Texas, there's X number of projects, if we see it's getting over the threshold and we just want a few more big jobs, we'll start looking to fill it and fill a role to help that person out. So it's pretty dynamic.
yeah.
But yeah, we're constantly, I'd say quarterly, we're probably doing deep dives on forecasting, making sure we got the right people in the right place.
Yeah, I think this is cool because taking it from this hypothetical angle, we also get a good view into what a scheduling manager does. So I really appreciate you sharing. Switching gears a little bit to more of the fun thing and less
Yeah.
of the tactical number thing.
Oh, yeah.
When you look to start building culture on your team, what are some ways that, you foster like kind of building that team together? Because let's say in this hypothetical, you've, brought people in, different walks of life, different things, and now you're trying to like build the culture of the team, help promote it through the organization. What are some of your tactics and strategies there?
Yeah, we're going to get back to that build relationships and communication thing.
I
Yeah.
pinned it. I pinned
Yeah,
it
I
in
knew
the
it was
frame.
coming back. So, yeah, so to me, we're a support service. That's what we do. We exist to help others. So that is a mindset. You cannot go in to a situation like I'm going to tell you what to do and how to do your job. Because the reality is you, with the experience and the specialty that we have, you probably know the best. But you can't come in there and lay it on them and tell them. You've got to build some trust with the superintendent. Those are your customers, the project manager, superintendent, the team, the frontline group. You've got to come to the project. You've got to sit with them. And I can't stress this enough. You have to learn the project. You have to have the information to be respected. You don't have to know everything, but you need to put the time in to study. And it's a respect thing. If you're going to come onto someone's job and to help them, you can't ask them every detail about their project. You need to know some things to help make their job easier, to approach them, ask a lot of questions, listen a lot. To me, that's the strategy of building that relationship that sticks. And once you have it, you can do all kinds of things you didn't believe you could have done. You can say things that are a little more commanding. You can have a presence, but you can't do it until you've maybe had a couple of beers with the superintendent. But not just that. I mean, to me, that's a misnomer. I think actually, it's get in there, show the grit, the hard work, learn, study the drawings, ask really good questions, even if they're questions you want to learn something about, some system on the job that you don't know enough about. Start asking the team, superintendent, questions about, just inquiring about the project. They love it. They love talking about their job and sharing their knowledge. Anyway, there's just a lot of little subtle things that aren't in a role description that can help you just relate. And when you build that trust, I think you can really start challenging, pushing the envelope. Because if we're not, as a support role, if we're not challenging people, we're not doing our job. But you can't, day one, can't walk in and just be all challenged. So it's just balancing that out. And I think it's something that we really work hard to our managers and level to make sure they understand that balance and can share it down and instill it in all of our people in our group. So,
Yeah, that is, I mean, it's huge. And then, I definitely think the like, hey, we'll just go grab beers and be buddies is totally a misnomer
yeah,
because the next day you'll show up on the job and you still won't know how they're going to install the HVAC and people will like,
they
roll
still
your
look at
eyes.
you like, yeah, what are you
Yeah, and
doing? Yeah,
it sets a tone. I mean, it
yeah,
really sets the tone. One of the tips that I've always learned is like you go talk to other people about stuff, so like you go talk to the engineer who's leading the system or leading the drawings and you sit down with them. And then when you come back to your superintendent, now you have that knowledge and there's a load of people out there. So you're not just like, choking one person, like you're not bottlenecking one
mm-hmm.
person in that. So talk about though, that's kind of like at the personal level. Talk about
Yep.
at your team level though, like, with your direct reports and as you build the organization, how are you fostering that broader team culture?
Well, so what I try to instill is what got me to a place to where I felt like I had a big following. So I try to set that by example. The thing you have to be really intentional about, you it's a thankless job, this support role. So you have to work hard to in my role to encourage, to stick with people, to just listen to them. Sometimes, there's so often things going on in a project, struggling with a relationship, somebody struggling with a superintendent relationship. You listen and, you're not going to solve them all. You're not going to solve a lot of it. You actually don't want to solve the problems. And it's really hard because you can know deep down with all your experience that you could solve it for them. But again, that's not going to help. So you give them advice. Hey, try this, try that, and stay positive. Me, myself, personally, I have to work really hard to stay positive because I hear all the noise of all the projects. I hear all the bad things. And it doesn't matter what company you're in, there's challenges everywhere. And you have to, when you're talking to your people, you have to park that and try and be as positive as you can. And it's something I constantly work on. But I just think being supportive, try this, and then let's talk about it at the end of the week. Tell me how it went. Did you try this different angle? And then you get that feedback. And that's some of the stuff right there that keeps you doing your job as a leader. When you start to hear back what people did and it worked, or it's a step in the right direction. So yeah, I think it's just being supportive, being positive, empathetic. You got to have a clear strategy though. You got to have where you want to go, and you can't just always be open arms. And you still got to have your plan as a leader, and it has to flow down, and people have to all understand it and know what the strategy is for the group and for the company. Those are two different things, obviously, but I think those are some of the things that I do, at least from my role. So
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I mean, you do have to have that high level plan. This is where we're going. This is kind of the guardrails of, what's acceptable, like, something silly like, hey, we're rolling out this new milestone. You
mm-hmm.
can't just be like, oh, well, you're having a tough day, you never roll it out. It's like that actually has to get in. These are the guardrails. But within the guardrails, I think that's a lot about what you were talking about, of where the empathy comes through and the coaching and the,
Mm-hmm.
that like, how are we going to grow and build you up as a planner and scheduler in the organization? Well, cool, Brady. I think, I was talking to the CEO of this GC, and they say you're doing a pretty good job. So you've kept your hypothetical job, and you might receive a fake Christmas bonus.
All right.
So feel free to go buy that fancy bag of coffee you've been eyeballing.
Yep.
Before we take off for today, any final thoughts, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think one thing I would say is the people. Getting the people in your group, in your organization, is the most important part. And so there's a few things I look at: growing internally, growing within. You're not going to be what you want to be without people that fit your model and your vision. So growing from within is, learning and development, opportunities internally. These are things that like you really have to make available for people. And, as your group grows, as it will, there's a lot of growth, especially if you have bigger projects. That's what really drives the staff up. It gets exponentially more challenging to not forget about how important it is to make sure people are getting the development opportunities, something that keeps their job engaging. But anyway, growing within, giving people opportunities to show that it's a career in planning and scheduling. This is not just we're going to buy you for this job and then see you. This is a career opportunity. And I also like to say, bring in some outside talent too. Mix it in. You definitely want some outside perspectives outside of our company. It helps. We lean on that. And then on the people side as well, diversity on the sense of different backgrounds, different opinions. It really does help. And we try to get our group together once a year. And now there's like almost 40 of us. So it's getting more challenging as we get bigger, but you get everybody together and you start to listen to just the things that different people from different backgrounds, different part of the country say, and it rubs off on other people. And it just makes you more well-rounded. And yeah, I truly believe that, when you talk about culture, that's where you start to see it. We don't have a bunch of people that are doing the same thing they've always done, right? It's really difficult to change, and especially in planning and scheduling, right? If you look at it, I mean, I know you've done plenty of, I don't want to overlap some of your other topics, but you've done some really good content on the recent change that's come up in the last 5 or so years. That is one of those looking ahead. I mean, just people, the idea of change when someone's been using P6 for 10 years or more, that's a challenge. But, we're doing our best to be open-minded and advance with the industry. So, or push it.
Yeah. No, that's a whole nother episode to crack into. changing P6. Brilliant. Brady, thank you so much for coming on. That was a great last segment. I 100% J done. If you're having a struggling to getting those 40 people together, have an offsite in Hawaii together as a team.
We'd go to Vegas. I got a bunch of people that want to go there too.
I'm sure after this episode, you'll find the budget, and feel free to bring a speaker with you. I'm sure you can find, a Beyond Deadlines host that isn't named Greg to come and do some speaking at your engagement. So I'll clear my calendar, probably March for Maui. Sounds good to me.
We go to Hawaii. You're on the list. Let's do it.
Amazing. I love it. Well, folks, thank you so much for listening this week. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll catch you on the next one.